One byproduct of love is vulnerability. True love causes one to be vulnerable with another one. It causes them to be real, to be raw, open themselves up and say, this is who I am. First time I gave you kind of generalized statement of how to deal with that distance, between you and your family, but it doesn't work the same way for your spouse. It does not work the same way for your spouse. Why not? Because your spouse knows you, right? My wife knows I'm like this, right? She knows I'm kind of anti-emotional. I'm not going to say that, but you know, I don't mean that literally is what I'm saying. I mean what I said in the first video, but I'm just trying to keep it short. She knows, I'm like anti-emotional. I don't want to deal with my emotions. I just want to work. I just want to get it done, pass the day by and keep on moving, right? She knows I'm like that. So it's not going to work just to try to drown it because it's your spouse, right? Your spouse needs you to be raw you. Your spouse he or she does not need you to be hiding yourself in an attempt to pass the days by. For the kids, it's okay for the kids because I need them to get in a sort of routine of knowing that this distance needs to become as normal as possible. And what doesn't need to be normal is us uncontrollably crying all the time, okay? For a kid, they don't have that emotional intelligence to be able to balance their emotions and understand when I need to shut the crying down. But a spouse, you can be on the phone with your spouse like, man, I sure miss you right now, and they can handle that hurt. Okay, so how do you handle being away from your wife for so long? Again, the normal stuff, right? We talked about in the first video. Facebook, Marco Polo pictures, yada yada yada. Text, we talk daily over the phone, yada yada yada. But how else do you handle it? I'm not trying to go into a whole doggone love counseling session or anything of that nature, but there is a pretty popular book that came out probably 15, 20 years ago, maybe about, my guess is 10 to 15 years ago or something of that nature, called The 5 Love Languages, right? Most people are familiar with it. It discusses it. Basically, in summation, it basically talks about how everyone has certain love languages, and that is the way they speak love. Well, if your love language is words of affirmation and my love language is gifts, I'm probably going to tend to try to give you gifts because that is what I speak. However, in order for you to perceive that I am loving you at the best that I possibly can, it would be better if I'm more intentional about giving you words of affirmation rather than giving you gifts, because that is the way you feel love. That's your love language. That's what you speak. One of the ways that I handle the distance is I try to be as intentional as I possibly can about speaking my wife's love language. If I speak her love language, then she is going to feel as loved as I can possibly make her. Now, there is, there are, I think one or two of the love languages may be like physical touch and, maybe there's another one, I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe there's another one that's next to impossible to achieve with distance between the two people. Like I used to tell people, when I worked at my last job that I was supervising, all you can do is the best that you can do. That's all you can do. After that, it's a wrap. All you can do is the best you can do. All you can do is the best you can do, okay? I do everything I possibly can to speak that love language. Everything that I possibly can. And in contrast, the second thing that I do in contrast is, instead of the suppression, I try to just be vulnerable and raw, okay? One, just feels like love advice right now. One characteristic of love is vulnerability. Okay, I don't know if characteristic's the right word, but one implication, one byproduct of love, byproduct seems to be a lot better. One byproduct of love is vulnerability. True love causes one to be vulnerable with another one. It causes them to be real, to be raw, open themselves up and say, this is who I am. For spouses, I allow myself to be vulnerable instead of shutting it down. And I wish, man, yeah, sure, there's sometimes I wish I could tell my daughter, man, baby, you don't know how much I love you. You don't know how much I miss you. She's not going to know how to control that, though. She's not going to know how to balance that with, he'll be back, you know, he's doing this for us. He's making a sacrifice. She doesn't understand that, so she doesn't need to hear it. My wife understands that, though. See what I'm saying? My wife gets that. So as much as I can, I allow myself to be vulnerable. A lot of times I'll be talking to my wife about how I feel and I don't feel like talking about it. If you watch the first segment, I told you I'm just not that type of person. I don't feel like talking about my emotions. I just want to sit here and do my job and get the work done, right? There's a lot of times I'm talking about how I feel. I don't even feel like talking about it, but I'm doing it because I understand that she sees that vulnerability and she sees, you know, she sees love. She perceives like, man, that's love. He could have just sat in the truck and not called me. Because honestly, on my worst days, I just don't call. I don't call. I don't want to call. I really don't want to text much. I'll probably, you know, I talk to you at the end of the day. I call you real quick, but I'm about to go to bed or something. On my worst days, that's who I am. That's the husband I am. I'm just being real. Just being real. It's the husband I am because I don't want to talk about it. You know, I got stuff going on in my truck. I got people giving me attitudes and all this other jazz. I don't want to talk. It is what it is. I'll try to call and I'll hang for a couple minutes, but after that, I just need to be alone. But vulnerability, okay? Speaking your spouse's love language is extremely important. Being vulnerable is extremely important. And lastly, getting home when you can is extremely important. Getting home when you can is extremely important. You know, you talk to some people, right, who have kids that are like 30 years old, have kids that's like 30 years old or something like that, 20, 30 years old. They've been married, you know, 30, 35 years or something like that. Their family's not young, you know, they're retired or something like that. And they're like, man, you need to be on the road 6 to 8 weeks. About 8 weeks is perfect, you know, 7 to 8 weeks. They be telling you, go on the road. But for me, it's not going to work for me. I have other responsibilities rather than take loads. You see what I'm saying? Carry loads, picking up and dropping loads and trailers and stuff. I have a responsibility to my family. I have a responsibility as a husband, and I need to fulfill that responsibility if I want to be an honest man. And I'm gonna be an honest man. You see what I'm saying? I need to fulfill that. I need to do what I gotta do. Heard some birds or something. So that is another thing. Sure, I could make more money by not going home every 4 or 5 weeks or something of that nature, but I need to be at home. There are people at my house that need me. So that's what I do. If I can take a load that passes by the house, I'm going by the house, I'm going to stay at the house. And that is not like an infrequent thing for those of you who are not at prom yet. If I can take a load by the house, take it by the house. Stay the night, even if it's just for a couple hours. Sometimes I even, you know, I have a load that goes by, but I can only stay like very briefly. I'm pulling in the afternoon and I need to leave early morning. And I'm asking my wife, like, is that worth it? Like, should I even do that? Am I just causing like an emotional tornado at the house? I'm gonna rile everybody up, now I'm gonna leave, you know? But she's always like, no, you should really come, you know, it'd be good for the kids, etc., etc. So I go. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so how do you handle the distance between you and your spouse? Everything from the first segment, but some changes first. You gotta speak your spouse's love language. Don't be so selfish thinking about your love language, think about your spouse's love language. If you don't know what their love language is, if you go to like 5lovelanguages.com, they have like this assessment. If both of you take the assessment, you can find out what your love language is. Number 2, be vulnerable, be raw, be real about your day, about your mood, about your emotions for your spouse. Speak those things out, even if it seems like you're repeating yourself often. And number 3, you need to get to the house and stop playing around. The money is not worth more. The money is not worth more. Okay? P.S. Here's a little P.S. P.S. All that junk about if you're not out here on the road, cuz this is a whole different YouTube video, but whatever your marriage is before the road is what your marriage will be after the road. I see Facebook posts and stuff all the time about, oh, why truckers always get divorced, yada, yada. Whatever your marriage was before you got this job, that's what your marriage is going to be after this job. All right? So be honest with yourself. Be honest with your marriage right now, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be what it was before. It don't change, you know. All that stuff don't happen. Don't listen to that. That's nonsense. It's your boy, Travis Kinley. This has been Family and Trucking Segment 2. Y'all be safe, stay safe, drive safe. I love you. Find you somebody loving. Don't forget, it's not what you believe, but it's why you believe it, and I'm going to talk to you soon.